Welcome everyone to the weekly Survive and Thrive webinars. A very, very special thank you to Jacqueline, who subbed in at the last moment for us. So Jacqueline, I very, very much appreciate you being flexible and joining us today. And my good friend Jason, thank you for your generosity.
Happy to be
I'll have
here.
both of you guys introduce yourself here in a little bit, but thank you so much for being willing to share your wisdom with us today and help us all to navigate through all of this craziness. So the topic for today, as everyone knows, is getting unstuck and staying motivated. With the last 8 weeks of craziness, being shut in and isolated and all of that, some of us probably have had significant struggles both professionally and personally. A number of us, and I'm sure folks will talk about it, have had their business, completely shut down and affected. And so part of the reason that I set these weekly meetings up is to create a community of businesses that can get together, right, to learn, to share, to motivate, and to support one another. And I use the word community. Jason will use the word tribe. It's all the same idea of, it's too hard to run a business on your own. And so having people in your corner who can help support you. And so that's the whole purpose of these, learn together and help each other to get through this crazy time of, and even if the pandemic wasn't here, just running a business in general is tough, right? It's one of the hardest things there is to do. And so the idea of making sure we've got people around us to help navigate through that. So I'm just going to give a little bit of information about Action Coach as a little bit of a background here. So I am a local franchise owner of Action Coach Business Coaching, and it is privately owned and founded by Brad Sugars, who is an entrepreneur and an author. He started it in Australia, so if you ever hear him speak, that'll be clear. The head office now is in Las Vegas. Our vision is world abundance through business re-education. So the idea there is a lot of businesses aren't, small and medium-sized businesses in particular, aren't run according to best practices. So for the folks who take the time to learn how to run a great business, the sky's really the limit, because you're now going to significantly differentiate yourself from your competitors. And that's where that idea of world abundance comes in. We don't believe in competition at Action Coach. We call it co-opetition, because there's more than enough business out there for all of us if we're willing to do what is needed in order to go after it. We are the #1 business coaching firm in the world. We've got 1,000 offices in 80 countries around the world, and we coach about 15,000 businesses each week across our franchise. The core principle of what we coach is how to turn a business from a job into a true business. So you as a business owner, right, instead of just buying yourself a job, you move into the role of a business owner. And so we define a successful business as a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you, the business owner, so that you have the freedom, flexibility that you probably went into business for in the first place. And then you create a successful business to provide the wealth that you probably went into business for. We've got a model here on the right. It's called the 6 steps to building a better business. It starts at mastery, which is the foundation of the business. You think of a high rise. If you don't have the footing solid and you try to scale the high rise, it'll crumble. Same with a business. So this is all about eliminating chaos. Niche is all about marketing and sales, having a unique ownable selling proposition that differentiates you from your competitors so you can have a predictable cash flow. Leverage is all about systems to make you run more efficiently and effectively. Team is all about ensuring you've got the right people on the bus, they're sitting in the right seat on the bus, and they're able to take things off of your plate as the owner so that you can pull back from the day-to-day. Synergies at that point where you've got the systems in place that are helping the business run more efficiently and effectively. You've got the team in place so that you now have the freedom and flexibility to become more of a manager as opposed to a doer. And so the whole goal here is you're climbing up the entrepreneurial ladder from self-employed to entrepreneur. So at the synergy level, you can start to think about what's next? Do I open another location? Do I start another business? Do I sell this business because it's now sellable because it runs without you? And then ultimately achieving whatever the long-term results are that you had when you went into business for yourself. All right, so the agenda today, I'll kick it off with a mindset slide, then I'll introduce the panel, and Jacqueline and Jason will take us through a few slides and insights and wisdom. Then we'll end with a special offer, talk about some future seminars and webinars that are coming up. During that, after that panel discussion, we do open it up to everyone on the call to ask questions, to share insights and learnings that you have, to share challenges that you're having, and that the panel can help you address. And then we'll talk about next steps at the very end. So, how many of you guys know teenagers who are experts at saying "I know"? Yeah, so right, they usually forget something, and we realize that they're forgetting it, and we remind them of it, and if it's anything like here, my stepson was like, "Yeah, Mom, I know," even though we know that they don't know. Right? Well, when we become adults, we get a little bit more polite with the idea of saying "I know." Right? Instead of saying it out loud like teenagers do, we may just politely cross our arms in a meeting, right? Or subtly roll our eyes when we don't think anyone's looking, or we may just mumble it under our breath, "I know." But here's the problem with "I know." It actually tells our reticular activating system or our subconscious that there's no value in this meeting, and it can stop paying attention and go drift off and work on the other problems that we've been working on. So it actually stops the possibility that we're going to learn something and then in that interaction because of the fact that we've assumed that there's no value. So instead of saying "I know," right, in those situations, we encourage folks to replace that with something like, "Isn't that interesting?" Or, "Tell me more," right? Keep your mind open to the possibilities that even if you know the general topic, there's probably some nuances in that conversation that you're going to benefit from if you go into that with an open mind and allow yourself the opportunity to learn. So I encourage everyone today, as well as some of these topics you probably know, but there's going to be nuances and different suggestions and tips that we're going to be able to learn from each other. So encourage everyone to keep an open mind today.
I also really like the church ladies' take on that. For those of you who were church lady people back in the day on Saturday Night Live, right? Well, isn't that special?
Absolutely.
Try that one too.
All right, so now I'm going to hand it over to Jacqueline, and I'll flip the slides here for you, Jacqueline, if you just let me know when you want to go to the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Tim. And I am really happy to be here with you and Jason and everybody joining. Like Tim said, I am Jacqueline Martinez, the Director of Search at HRD Advisory Group. And at HRD, I get to do the work that I love, which is making work better for people. Our mission as a consulting firm is to elevate the employee experience, and we do that through leadership development and through all aspects of HR. So I am not Andrea Butcher. She was originally slotted to chat with you all today, but I stepped in last minute for her. She is a dynamic speaker. She's an amazing leader. So it is super unfortunate that you have to miss out on her today. But while I'm chatting with you for a minute, I will reference places you can find her if you have not yet interacted with her. And believe me, you want to. So with that, shifting into the topic of getting unstuck and finding your motivation, here's a picture we can all relate to as leaders. On the top, you have a vision for your future, right? You set goals for yourself and for your business. You set out to crush your goals. You have the tools that you need to get it done. The year is going to be great, 2020, right? But then things happen. So if you look at the picture right below that, you see the person on the bike and they encounter something problem. They have to abandon the bike altogether. So they get off and they run up the hill and have to crawl over a ladder. What's that? Okay, so they've reached their top, right? Nope. They have to dive in and use a new tool, a boat. So you see them going across the lake or river or ocean. Problems can come in all sizes. And then they have to climb an even bigger hill. And it's a little rocky, but overall smooth. Come across a rainstorm or a snowstorm or whatever it is that day, and then sunshine, right? So a lot of us as business leaders, entrepreneurs, we realize that leadership is in reality the picture on the bottom, right? So Tim, if you'll advance forward, we realize that leadership is hard during normal times, but especially now, all aspects of our lives have changed. Anxieties are high, collaboration with our colleagues looks really different. Leaders at all levels are feeling the effects of this new challenge, and they are being asked to do way more, and in some cases with way less, and still maintain energized and engaged teams. For businesses of all sizes, they're managing remote teams, anxieties, uncertainties, their well-being, having to deal with, control, preventing burnout. The list can go on and on. We're doing a lot. So which leadership skills are most important right now? This is a personal story. So I woke up on Sunday morning to a text message from Andrea that said, what are the 3 biggest things we need right now as leaders? What are the qualities that are needed most? And I answered, and we have exchanges like this pretty often. So I was like, oh, it's just another idea we're working on together. But then the next morning, I finally was able to talk to her, and she said, oh, I was doing research.
I got the same text message.
Yeah. So Tim, if you'll go to the next slide, Andrea did her own research of about 40 people, including Jason, and asked this question. And the words that are on the screen are the words that she received in her text messages. And if you look, the words that are the biggest are the words that were most often used. So empathy, communication, transparency, visionary, resilient, adaptability. We can all agree that these are what is needed right now. And when I think of empathy, I think of a heart with ears, right? So you're basically just an understanding person, an understanding leader. This is really hard to do with everything else going on, right? So Tim, if you'll move to the next slide. Thank you. So initially, Andrea posed this slide, and I wish that she was here to talk about herself because she really is a leader worth following. Go find her. But I will talk about these in light of me, because this is something that Andrea and I do have in common. So where does my endurance come from? And I lead on a different level, but I get to talk to amazing leaders every single day and every single week. And they all have their energy and their sources are different, right? For me, it is my faith. What I believe in really drives what I do, who I am, and how I do things. My tribe, and I will let Jason talk more about why this is so important, but I really did hone in on the people around me and really took the initiative to carefully choose who I am letting influence my life, and made sure that they were diverse enough to make me a better leader. And then my service, what I do, I finally feel so aligned and passionate about the things that I get to do every day. And it's always out of a heart of giving. If any of you are Enneagram enthusiasts, I am a 2, which is the giver, the helper. And just being of service is what lights me up. So Tim, if you'll move on, thank you. So this is a little plug about where you can find Andrea. And also one of the ways that she is able to give to the world through the podcast, being at work. She's the host. She's an amazing host. And this podcast is a weekly deep dive into leadership lessons. So she interviews leaders, and it's a quick listen, 30 minutes, And some really good lessons come out of that. However, in the quarantine, she had the idea to start a daily aspect of this podcast, which is the daily dose of encouragement. And if you have not listened to the daily dose of encouragement, you should at least try one or a couple. I actually start my day with this every single day, because the ideas that she talks about on the podcast are impactful and inspiring. And honestly, I'm not kidding when I tell you they get me out of bed in the morning, because not every day you are 100% motivated. But she, I know that she uses her real life library and her lifelong learning mindset. She has a huge, if you've ever chatted with her, a huge bookshelf. And on that bookshelf are books that she's read, all of, highlighted, underlined, and that is where a lot of the material comes from in personal stories about her life. So if you are on Apple Podcasts, I suggest that you go find it right now and subscribe, because you will not be sad what you come up with. But here's the thing about motivation, and Tim, if you'll go to the next slide. Here's the thing about motivation. The brain attaches to vision. So what is our future state, right? So as a human, when you're focused on what is in front of you, and this is what a lot of leaders, especially operational leaders that I'm talking to right now, what they're focused on, taking care of the day-to-day operation, putting out fires, trying to figure out how to survive the next couple of weeks. Couple that with self-care, and survival of yourself and your family. I mean, it's easy to get stuck and feel stuck, like you're just kind of on a hamster wheel doing the same thing every single day. But when you do a few things every day to put yourself in that future state on where you want to go, your brain and your body, they say, I'm touching ambition, and then I have action and momentum. And with those little pieces of momentum, you spark motivation, and then everything changes. So with your talent and your teams, they need the same thing. They need to touch the hem of the future by seeing momentum and basically motivating themselves and their teams to get on board. And so at HRD, we're doing this in a couple of different ways. We are suggesting short bursts of learning and connection, and basically offering, and this is a new offering, everything is very customizable, but we've put together a special set of developmental programs. So this is 3 2-hour virtual workshops over the course of 3 weeks for leadership groups, big and small. And they're focused really on the most important leadership skills that are needed right now. Like we talked about earlier, empathy, communication, adaptive, visionary, and resiliency. And like I mentioned earlier, this is another great way to get in touch with Andrea, because she will be leading a lot of these workshops herself, along with Amanda, another talent development expert in our firm. So for the short while, my colleague Denny and I are basically chatting with business leaders, visionaries, and seeing if this is something that's right for them. On that note, I'm really excited to give by way of service and in any way possible, and help figure out what momentum looks like for individuals, teams, to get just yourself on board. Just getting yourself out of bed on a daily basis can be really challenging. So with that, do you have any questions?
I'm going to ask everyone, I forgot to do this at the beginning, go ahead in the chat box and write who you are, what company you work for, and then where you're located.
And as they're doing that, I'll just pop in real quick. And first of all, just have mad respect for Jacqueline jumping into to this today. I posted when I heard that she was going to do it. I posted on LinkedIn today. And I said, one of the mottos that I run my life by is, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. That's from the book of 2nd Barnaby, by the way, if you ever want to a reference for that. But I love the fact that one of Jacqueline's, I'm gonna shout her out a little bit, but one of her mottos is roll up and show up. And That's exactly what she did today. And yes, we missed having Andrea on here today, but I'm really glad that we got to have you here today. And if you don't listen to From Coffee to Wine, which is Jacqueline's podcast, you are missing out. It's good stuff. Go check it out. Coffee to Wine.
Thank you, Jason.
All right. Well, let's transition over to you, Jason.
All right. So I was really thinking about some of these things that Tim had said, 10 ways to stay motivated and get unstuck. And so I have a few that I just want to talk about that I've seen really come through this time. I mean, Jacqueline said at the beginning, like 2020, new year, new me, new decade, COVID, and it's like crap. And I've talked to so many people who had, killer momentum going in from 2019 into 2020. I personally was having the best quarter from a financial standpoint, from a business growth. I mean, from every aspect that you could imagine. And then freaking COVID. And so it's like, all of that stuff gets stripped away, right? Like all the plans you're making with the money you're going to make and all the things you're going to do and all that stuff. And so, Tim, if you go to that next slide, for me, it's really about what sets your heart on fire. And that fire needs to burn regardless of what's going on in the world, right? And so I've got to imagine that there are an awful lot of people in the world today who are like, man, 10 weeks at home, I've realized that I hate my job or I hate my boss or my team or my stupid 45-minute one-way commute or more, right? So one of the things that I would just encourage people to do is ask this question: what sets your heart on fire? And do you even know? And what I find is that so often in our lives, either we don't know, or we're so, or we know and we're so afraid of what that answer is that we don't want to acknowledge that. So it's like, I don't really know what that thing is, but I know it's not what I'm doing now, but I'm too afraid to find out what that thing is. So I want to show you what's on my shirt, because you can't really see it with my microphone in the way. So I just want to show you. So it's this idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And knowing, and I think we've found this, and you can go to that next slide, Tim, is that this is very true, that old ways do not open new doors, right? The way things have always been are not the way things are going to be. They've already changed. I know people who they're like, well, 10 weeks ago, we had 5 different suppliers that we could buy from. Now we have 1 because the other 4 went out of business. And by the way, the 1 is back ordered for another 3 months. So what do we do now? And I hear those kinds of questions and those kinds of challenges with a ton of different clients that I meet with. I worked with a group right when this started happening in the manufacturing world that literally shut down production for almost 2 months. I mean, the old ways of doing things are not the new ways of doing things. And those old ways, if we want to really open new doors and do new things, it's hard to do. So the next slide is a great way to start doing that. And that's just asking the question, what if? And so often what happens with what if is a lot of times we go to the negative side of what if, and I call those what if abouts, right? So what if this happens? Well, gosh, if that happens, what about that? Well, what about that? What about that? And before we know it, we're running down this domino line of like all these terrible things that we think are going to happen that, by the way, never happen because they're all here. And what if we flip that script and say, well, what if, I've heard people say, I've talked to a ton of people this week, and I was actually on an international call right before this with Humans First. And it's like the 9th time this week that I've heard about imposter syndrome. And it's amazing to me how many people, how much this is coming up again. And if you're not familiar with it, it's this idea that like, I've got the job, or I'm doing this thing, but I really don't have it figured out. And one of these days I'm going to show up at a meeting and everybody's going to figure out that I'm an imposter, right? Like they're going to give me a task that I can't do. They're going to ask me a question that I can't answer. They're going to tell me to do something and I'm not going to have a clue how to do it. And suddenly the world's going to know I'm a big fat imposter. And so I've heard people this week even say like, well, I haven't applied for that job because what if I don't get the promotion? Or I haven't asked for this thing because what if my boss won't like me asking that question? And I like to encourage people to flip the script. What if you apply for the job and you get it, right? What if you ask your boss and they say yes? What if you take the risk and it works out like tremendously in your favor? So let's flip the script on that and start asking what if in a positive way. Let's go to the next one, Tim. And one way to do that is to really focus. I love this because it's a visual. And when I start to spin out of control a little bit and like, oh my gosh, I've got this over here and all these things and everything's, the sky's falling, and how that place in the middle of those two circles, what does it, and this is a great just filter. Does it matter? Can I control it? Because if it doesn't matter, move on. If you can't control it, move on. If it matters and you can control it, whoosh, put that energy right into the middle of those two circles. That's where it needs to go. So that's one. Let's go to the next one. Here's another thing, and I do talk about tribe a lot. Jim Rohn has a great quote that I use. I think this will be, I don't even know, maybe the 100th time I've said this quote, but that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And whether that's 5 or 7 or 4 or whatever your number is, the fact of the matter is the people that we hang out with have an effect on who we are. And that more than any time in the past is so important in today's world regarding our digital tribe, right? Because I've seen some statistics that, you know, the amount of time that we spend on these things over quarantine has, like, I don't know, increased by exponential numbers. So who are you following? Who are you subscribing to? And you know, I know people who every day when they scroll through their feed, they're like, oh, there she is again. Gosh, I can't stand her. Oh, it looks like he got a promotion. Ooh, nice car. Wish I could go on a vacation like that. And it's like all this scrolling through things that do nothing for you. And so unsubscribe, unfollow those people, and fill it with, like, you know, Jacqueline was talking about picturing what's in the future and looking ahead to what that thing is. I love that quote. You said, touch the hem of the future. Ooh, I wrote that down. Like, how do we do that? Well, you start filling your feed with things that you want, things that you're dreaming of, things that you know that you can be successful at, and have those things fill up your feed, right? You want to go on a European vacation, start filling your feed with lots of places in Europe. So you're constantly thinking about it, constantly going back to it. Yeah, exactly. Vision boards. I love that. Let's go to the next one. The other thing, and I have this on the bottom, you know, a ritual to ignite your new year. I think it's a ritual to ignite your year anytime. And that is, you choose my wife and I have been doing this for several years. There's a lady who's made, I think, several $1 million with this idea of, it was called One Little Word. And the idea was, you had one word that you, like, put on your fridge and you scrapbooked it and you put it in a frame and you put it, like, you did all these things and you could buy these kits, and she made lots of money. And it's a really cool idea. We took it a little further about 4 years ago, and we started calling it word in and word out. So what's a word that you want to bring into your life, and what's a word that you want to take out of your life? And what I love about this is that you can do this for the whole year. My wife and I always do one for the whole year. We do a word in and a word out. But I work and consult with leadership teams who are dealing with some monster issues, like over a quarter or 2 quarters. And so my challenge is, what is your word in and your word out, that everybody on the team rallies around this word? And so everybody's focused on bringing more of whatever that thing is and taking something out too. One of the great examples is an IU Health team that was here that I worked with. Their word in was relationship, and their word out was blame. So what the leader was saying was, look, in order for us to be successful, we have to be in relationship with all the people around the organization. And if we don't have that, we're not going to be successful in this new thing that we're trying to do. And so the word in was relationship. And he said, the problem is you guys come into my office and you're doing this. Well, if they would just, and how come they can, and they haven't done this. And so he's like, when they came in blaming, he said, first question I started asking, do you have a relationship with that person? And so he actually put it on his whiteboard behind his chair in his office. And when people would come in and they would start complaining, he would just point to the word relationship. And they're like, ugh, okay, I know. And they would turn around and walk out. He goes, you know how much time this saved me in meetings talking about things? Because I would say, you're blaming, go get a relationship. And he said, once you have the relationship, if there's a problem, that's where I, as your leader, come in to move those roadblocks out of the way. But if you don't have a relationship, I don't want to hear anything about the blaming. All right, let's go to the next one. Everything you want is on the other side of fear. Listen, I am living this, and I know that there are a lot of people who are going to look at this and who are going to say, like, I don't know what to, like, I've lost my job. I don't know what to do. I've been furloughed. I don't know if I'm coming back. They've rolled back the position, or I'm at a, there's a bajillion different things that people could be dealing with. Fear. I hate fear. It's a stupid liar. It is and the thing that I realize with fear is that it's not very, it's tenacious. Like, it doesn't give up. It's always there. It's like right behind your ear, but it's not very creative. So when you learn to stand up to the stupid fears that have been plaguing you most of your life, they're not very creative to come up with new ways to make you afraid. So if you stand up to it and you realize what's on the other side of fear, which is like tremendous joy and freedom and all kinds of amazing things, some really cool things happen. And for me, that was, next slide for me, Tim, was me taking a pivot during this whole COVID time. I wrote a program, which you can see right back there, Tribe of Five, or 30 Days to Blaze, which is back there. And but I redid it during this COVID time to be a Tribe of Five. And I was like, well, what if I have what if abouts too? Just because I talk about it doesn't mean I don't have them, right? But I was like, well, what if I put all this work in and nobody signs up? Well, there's actually somebody on this call today who just texted me and said that they have their first Tribe of Five, which I'm very excited about. Angie Redmond, thank you so much. And so, it's what if nobody signs up? Well, what if 1,000 people sign up? Well, that's going to be a pretty good quarter, right? So I'm putting it out there, and I just I'm finding that there are lots of different avenues that I didn't even think about that are really exciting for it. And so I would just encourage you to figure out what's on the other side of fear. Let's go to the next slide. And I'm just going to selfishly tell you, I would love to have you follow me on social media and different places. So these are all the places that you can find me. I do a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. I'm starting to do more on YouTube because of my good friend who's also on here today, Thomas West, has been encouraging me to do some YouTube stuff. So I'm starting to do that. I grew my subscriber following yesterday by 1 subscriber. I put it out on my Instagram. I said, hey, if you've got a YouTube, go out and follow me. And, again, I was like, well, what if nobody does? But what if somebody does? And somebody did. So I got the first one and off we go. And then the very last thing is this last slide. And I just think it's a decision that you have to make, to get unstuck. I've heard people say that the pain of staying where you are has to be greater than the pain of changing in order for you to really make the change. And man, you guys, I rode the elevator for so many years, not just in the building that I worked in, but when I would travel for business and ride other elevators where you're just with people who are going through the motions. I call them the Eeyores of life, right? You ask them it's like, how you doing? It's like, not bad for a Monday, right? Or, not bad for a Wednesday or Friday. The answer was the same regardless of what day of the week it was. And they're just freaking miserable. And I think life's too short. I just got, last week, I got a call that a good friend of mine that I used to work with in the corporate world passed away. She had moved to a different part of the country. Lots of us had lost touch with her, and many, many, many of us did not get a chance to say goodbye the way that we wanted to. Life is too freaking short. It just is. That's all I got.
Questions for Jason? Thank you, Jason. We will open
Thank
up a dialogue at the end, as I said. I've got a couple of slides here to build on what Jacqueline and Jason shared. So I love Jason's shirt about being comfortable. What is it? Be comfortable
being uncomfortable. Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Because, right, as our nature is to stay in our comfort zone, right? We want that safety and the security. I'm sure you've all gone to seminars or you've listened to webinars like this where, you know, you leave all encouraged and motivated and say, I am gonna make that change. I am gonna implement that into my life. And then a couple, weeks later, you're back to the way that you were. And part of the reason for that is change is challenging, right? And we don't read a book and know exactly how to do that new activity right away. It takes a number of times for it to become the new habit and for us to feel comfortable actually doing it before we even, get to the point where it's working properly. We just have to learn how to do it. And many of us give up going through that learning curve because, in all seriousness, right, change is hard. We already know how to do the thing the way that we've always done it. And Jason mentioned this formula here. We have a formula for it. He mentioned the idea of it is the formula for change. So D times V plus F has to be greater than R. So our dissatisfaction with our current situation has to be big enough that, and we have to be aware of it enough, plus our times a vision of what does a better tomorrow look like. Right? So that vision board or whatever it is that we want tomorrow or next year to look like, or the end of this year to look like, plus an understanding of what are the first steps to get there. So that has to be greater than our resistance to change. We are creatures of habit. We are going to hold on to that comfort zone, that safety net of the way that I've always done it. So if you're finding yourself not willing to change, then you want to look at these three areas, right? Maybe I'm just not dissatisfied enough with my current situation. I've got to spend some time reflecting on that, right? Maybe I need to brainstorm and write out a list of all the reasons that where I am today sucks, right? To Jason's point, if you're Eeyore and it's just another day, well then spend some time and write that out and really reflect on and meditate on how bad that really is, right? And then similarly, well, how much better could it be if you were to actually change? So what's that vision, right? And spend that same amount of time. Vision boards are awesome, right? You cut out pictures from magazines and you cut and paste and just going through that exercise really gets your mind thinking about and getting excited about what that vision could look like and feel like and be like. And then first steps, right? You may know what the vision is and you may aspire to get there, but if you don't know how to move in that direction, then you're likely to stay stuck as well. So there's a number of people, right? A number of people on this webinar who are experts in different areas of helping to take those first steps. Right? And so by being on webinars and finding your tribe and getting involved in communities or getting coaching or having a support network or accountability partners, all of those folks, reading books, the 5 people that you surround yourself with, all of those are resources to help you figure out what those first steps are. What I would encourage, and I know Jacqueline and Jason would as well, is just don't stay stuck, right? Don't allow yourself to give up on the idea that your life isn't what you want it to be, but you're just too afraid to try to figure out how for it to be better, or you're just too afraid to try and fail. Make sure that you're taking those steps to figure that out. And I always say this phrase to my clients of it's progress, not perfection. Right? So that fear of putting yourself out there and maybe failing or having somebody give you a negative reaction, do what Jason said, unsubscribe them, right? If you have somebody that reacts negatively to you on social media, then just get rid of them. My coach tells me that I just have to ignore any negative feedback I get. I just delete it. Don't even pay attention to it until it starts to become a trend. So another thing that we talk about, and Jason alluded to this earlier as well, is what we call the point of power. So we can either be above the or below the point of power. It's a daily choice that we have. People that are below the point of power live in this proverbial bed of life of blame, excuses, and denial. So it's very easy for that to happen right now. Right? We can't control the virus. We can't control the government putting restrictions on us and right making us work from home or not work it or not allowing our business to be open. So it can be very easy to spiral into everything's out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to stick my head in the sand and wait. Okay? Or we can live above the point of power and take our oar of life and chart our own course and figure out, right, what things can we own, what can we be accountable for, and how can I be responsible for making my situation better. So Jason's pivot with the Tribe of Five is a great example of, he didn't allow all the things that are sucking right now to leave him stuck in bed, right? He figured out, how do I repivot my business model to allow myself to have something that I can sell right now, right? How can I survive during this crisis and have income coming in? So he took ownership, accountability, and responsibility. Right? So ask yourself, right, do we want to choose to be powerless or do we want to choose to be powerful? And it's a daily choice. And even though we may decide, hey, I'm going to be powerful, there's going to be times that life's still going to punch us in the gut. Right? And we're going to find ourselves down below in that proverbial bed. And that's where we need our tribe, right? That's where we need accountability partners. That's where we need our coaches, right? Somebody, our significant other, somebody that can point it out and say, hey, you're not aware of it right now, but are you in that proverbial bed of life? And and you're like, yep. And it's somebody obviously that you've made it safe to have those conversations with, right? But you can be, yep, I am. And so now I need to make the next right decision to pull myself out of there and do something about that. Because if we get stuck in that powerless place, it becomes very infectious, right? It grows on us, and the longer we're there, the harder it is to get out, and then it starts spreading to people around us. So I am going to pause. I've got one more slide that's just a summary of a lot of the things that we talked about today, but I want to pause and open the floor to any comments, questions, just general dialogue.
I'm gonna jump in with something that I read. I actually put it in my email. In my email that I write, I do 3 a week, and I put this in today's, and I want to read it to you all. It's from a book by, the author is Jim Rohr, and he quotes a study by a guy named Rick Hansen, who's a neuroscientist, and he said, studies like the ones done by neuroscientist Rick Hansen show that we must consciously hold on. I want you to think about this as I'm reading this. I want you to think about what he's telling you to do and when the last time is that you actually did this. Show that we must consciously hold on to a positive thought or feeling for a minimum of, does anybody know how long you need to hold on to a conscious thought or positive thought? A positive thought or feeling for it to make an imprint on your neurons. Anybody have an idea? How long? Ooh, Steve, you got the number right, but the unit is way more than you need. Man, it'd be great. Actually, so this is good news for you. You're right, 15 seconds. So hold on to a positive thought or feeling for a minimum of 15 seconds before it leaves any imprint on your neurons. Think about when the last time is you just spent 15 seconds. I did this today when I was writing my email, and I literally said it. I thought about, here's my positive feeling. Steve will appreciate this, being a Utah guy. I remembered my perfect powder skiing day in Utah back in my ski bum days. It was a blue sky powder day. Literally, there were 4.5 feet of new snow on the ground, and it was, I mean, like, I can close my eyes right now and I'm there. But to put it in my head for 15 seconds, like, I was distracted, right? So for 15 for 15 seconds. And he says the whole dynamic, in fact, is called the Velcro Teflon theory of the mind. And we are more, what he says is we are more attracted to the problem than to the solution. And so this idea that, you know, if you don't, like, the things that you think about slip off really quickly, like Teflon, but the bad stuff is like Velcro. And I don't know if you guys remember those Velcro walls where you could like run like in a Velcro suit and like jump on a wall, which it's like, then they got to peel you off. So I never really saw the, you know, why you would want to do that. But you could do that, but it's like you really had to peel people off and you were like really stuck. And without much effort, that's how the negative stuff in our head is. And I just started thinking about that, like the intention and the amount of effort that I put into that to really make that imprint of the positive in my brain. I don't spend anywhere near the 15 seconds that's needed on the positive side. I will quadruple that often on the negative side, which just makes the Velcro that much stickier, right? So I thought that was incredibly insightful that that it's so easy to get stuck. And especially now, because we're not having coffee meetings, we're not in the office. You know, I've been on lots of calls recently where people are like, I miss my commute. You know, if for anybody who's listening to this after the fact, or anybody who's here now who misses your commute around your neighborhood. Put your headphones on, listen to Jacqueline's podcast or the Daily Dose or whatever, or the Green Dot, the Improvement Nerds podcast, any of those, and allow that to be your commute. Okay, so you don't get in the car for half an hour, so go for a walk. That's good for you anyway, right? Just flip the script on stuff. And I, like I said in the chat, I love that equation that you gave us, Tim, because I think that's so true. And so, you know, all of my emails end with, what will you do? Like, it's great that we got on this. It's great that we got on this webinar, right? It's great that we're here and we're together. But if you don't do anything as a result, what was the point of the time that you just spent doing this, right? What are we going to do?
To build on that positive 15 seconds, if you add an action to it, it can help reinforce it when you need to draw on it later. So for example, right, this is mine, and it just reminds me of, you know, the positive momentum that I've had in my business. So each time I get a win, I do that, and it reinforces that. And then when things aren't as good, that can be a way to just get my mental state back to remembering those wins.
Love it.
Yeah. Jason is everything that you state about being stuck and doing. I mean, it's something that I think we all know consciously, but subconsciously maybe don't apply it to ourselves. As a part of my day in recruiting world, people ask me all the time, Jacqueline, I know I want to do something different than what I'm doing, but I don't know what that is. So they're stuck, right? And so I say, okay, you know, what are some ideas or some possibilities for you? And they start to tell me, I'm like, okay, well, have you just started like whiteboarding that, or like writing it down, or doing anything with it? And they're like, no, I never thought of that. And I used to be that. I mean, Jason told me to do that myself. And just taking that one action is so powerful. So even if it's just writing a list of something, the act of writing and the act of putting your ideas into existence is a very initial step, but a first step nonetheless. Not saying any of you have that problem, but that's something that comes up. I'm so surprised in my day-to-day.
I make this list ahead of time without telling my panelists, and then I hope that some of these things are going to be what are discussed during the session. And I'm always very happy to see that many of them are and some aren't, and then so it just allows for us to have a little bit more of a conversation. So daily rituals, we did talk about this a little bit. The fact here that I think is so powerful is the way we spend the first 59 minutes of our day will dictate whether we have a good day or a poor day. So think about that. if the first thing you do in the morning is listen to news about all of the crisis in the pandemic, and you set your mind up to be, worried and afraid of all of that, then you're going to have a worried and afraid day. If you set up, and so I am statements are those positive reinforcements of, who are you? What is your purpose? What is the, so for me, I am making a difference in the lives of business owners and their family. Okay? That gets me razzed up every day, because especially right now, there's a lot of business owners that are struggling. So reminding myself of what my purpose is gives me the energy to make sure I'm reaching out to folks and making calls. So whatever that is for you, if it's exercise or meditation, gratitudes. We talked about accountability partners. Jacqueline talked about serving others, right? That's a great way to get out of our own head by giving back and pouring into other people. Beginning with your goals as well, right? What are the goals that you have for the month, for the week, for the day, and what action plans do you need to take? And look at those daily so that you're recentering yourself on what's most important and keeping your focus on those things. And as you're checking them off, it also gives, that positive reinforcement of you're making progress. Okay? Make sure you are celebrating your wins. A lot of folks make the mistake of, well, I'm going to save it up, and if we hit our annual goals, then we'll have a company party, right? Or we'll take that family on the trip. Well, this year is a great example of, not waiting for the end of the year because, right, there's too much going on. So find the win in every day. Find something that you can celebrate and feel good about and rally around with yourself and your team. Talked a lot about tribe, right? Staying in community. Progress, not perfection. Find yourself that whatever that positive stimulus is. Right? Talked about podcasts, the 5 people that you have that you're spending the most time with. What webinars are you investing in, or books are you reading, or videos are you watching? What are the things that you're doing to fill yourself with positive momentum and encouraging things? Give yourself time to step away and recharge, right? Self-care is important. So if you're working 24/7 and worrying about your business 24/7, you're going to wear yourself down. And this one's a hard one for me, because I've always been, a bit of a workaholic, and starting my own business about a year ago, right? There's a lot to do, but I do find myself burning out at times, and I have to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And at the end of the day, and both of the panelists already talked about this as well, is we really just need to know what our why is, right? What is the reason that we're doing the things that we're doing? What is it that's motivating and energizing us? Because when we know that, then everything else becomes a lot easier. Jacqueline or Jason, anything to add on anything from here?
I'll just say one, and I mentioned it earlier, because I think a lot of people, when we went virtual, for some people it was, I've been working on Zoom for years, it was no big deal, but for a lot of us, that distance between, like, I dress different, I drive to work, I'm a different person, I drive home, I change my clothes, I'm back to the person that I was at home. That has kind of gone, it's just been shattered, right? We've all been on Zoom calls with dogs and fish and iguanas and kids and aunts and, mothers-in-law and, all that sort of stuff. I would really recommend that if you are, because a lot of people aren't going to go back to the office. That's something that I've seen companies are like, you know what, we're actually saving money and stay home because fine, you can see the doors that I have right behind me. These are on my office. And one of the things I had to start doing when all this took place, because Tim, like you, there's always a proposal I can work on. There's always there's always a list of things that still are not done. So I can always come in here and tinker. It's like my woodshed, but it's technology stuff, right? And offerings. And so one of the things that I've started doing on the weekends when I walk out of here on Friday is I close the door to signify that the office is closed, and that allows me to not go back in. It allows me to be present with my family. And if you work on a laptop and you don't have a space, then I recommend sticking a Post-it note on your laptop when you close it that says office is closed until, and then whatever time, right? Monday at 8. And so when you're tempted to go, pick it up again, instead of that, listen to a podcast, take a walk, play a game with your family, read a book, but don't flip the laptop back up until the office is open again, whenever that is. I think that's a great, and it's hard, right? Because I'm like, but I could, everybody's doing other stuff. Okay, but I could go read a book instead of, working for the 60th hour this week on something. Let me go refill, recharge. And I think we forget that.
Yeah, Jason, and on that point too, your family appreciates it differently. If my light in my office is on, my daughter asks me why. She's 5. She's like, Mom, are you still working? Are you podcasting right now? I'm like, no. So I go and turn it off. But on that note, I mean, just physically, we said sense of adventure. I am I have to be moving at some point in my week, right? And a lot of us have seen the impacts on our body that the extra sitting is doing. And so before your body screams at you, I'm sure all of you are perfectly fine with movement, but for anybody else, that can be a really big deal if you wait physically. So movement is huge.
Any other thoughts from our guests today? Any challenges?
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'll chime in. Just listening to all the things everybody's doing, or reading all the things people are doing, and the challenge for me is that I don't have an office. I sit at the little dining room table, so there's no way to close doors or really cordon off that space. And we may change that in the future. But for me, one of the things that, if you guys know me at all, you'll know that I am a big fan of Dr. Pepper. and so one of my little rituals that I do is when it's time to stop working, I go grab one. And that's it's a ritual, but it's a ritual for me to stay I'm done with this. And now I'm rewarding myself a little bit, and I'll go outside. But that's it creates a kind of a emotional, mental connection or separation from work. And then again, like Jason said, don't flip the laptop. I used to be horrible at this, and I would be that leader that would be up all hours of the night looking at emails and writing things down, sending stuff out, and eventually I had to for a while, actually turn off the email account on my phone so that I wouldn't be tempted to do that stuff all night long. So those challenges are real.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that, Steve, that you're currently not able to work in another location. Is there ways that you can set up the dining room space so it still allows you to have that idea of separation, or that idea of closing the door or turning the light off, as Jacqueline said, so that you can still treat it as that's my workspace and now it's not?
Working on that. Yeah, we have some ideas because this is obviously going to be long term. So we're looking at some remodel and doing some things that might make it separate and interesting.
Michelle, you wrote about being productive and non-productive. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? I love the thinking there, because we all go through it.
There's just some days I just don't feel like doing anything, so I don't, because I know I'm not going to be productive if I do something, because it's not going to be productive how I want it to be done. And then the next day I get up and I realize I needed to get these actions done, and I get them done the next day. So it's that point of knowing when to stop and take a moment for myself versus working on it and continuing to work more at what I need to get done for my business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
There's just some days you just gotta do a binge fest on Netflix and just get away from everything, and the next day you just work harder at getting stuff done, or even 4 hours of work and then the other time to relax.
Yeah, I would really, I mean, I think in all of this, and we've all heard this phrase before, right? Like moderation in everything, or finding that balance. But if, you know, what good does it do you to make yourself sit down for 4 hours when you're terribly distracted and you're not doing anything? Like, you've logged, like, check, I've sat in the seat in front of my computer for 4 hours. I've scrolled through emails. I haven't been productive, when you could, like, maybe you just need to rest. Maybe you need to binge watch some Netflix. Maybe you just need to go to the park for the afternoon, right? Or maybe you just need a nap. I talked to a friend a couple of weeks ago. We were supposed to meet, and he goes, and he, you know, we had a Zoom call set up, and I, you know, got onto the Zoom and he wasn't there. And I texted him and he didn't respond. I sent an email, he didn't respond. And like 3 hours later, I get a text. Actually, he called me 3 hours later. He's like, dude, I'm so sorry. He's like, I laid down to take a nap before our call, and that was 5 hours ago. And he said, I just woke up. And he was super apologetic. And I'm like, that's what you needed, right? So I'm happy that we're going to actually get together when you've had some rest and you're in a better place. So, you know, one of the phrases I've used with people, and some of you have heard me say this, but just grace and space. Give grace and space to yourself. Give grace and space to other people. And the definition that I have of grace that I really like is called it's courteous goodwill. Give courteous goodwill to yourself. Be kind and good to yourself. Be courteous without judgment. And when we do that for ourselves, it's so much easier to do that to other people. But if you because we're all, I mean, some of us have lost people during this. We've lost jobs. We've got kids at home that weren't ever home before. Like, there's so much stuff going on. And if I saw this quote a couple weeks ago that said, if we can look at people, if we can judge people's reactions to us by realizing that it has everything to do with their situation and very little to do with who we are, yet we project that back on ourselves, like, oh, they're doing this because they're so, you know, they don't like me, or they, you know, whatever it is. But just if we just take a breath, like, before we respond, take a pause and just give that grace and space, it's just amazing what happens. But we've got to start with ourselves, because I truly don't believe you can give it away if you're not willing to give it to yourself.
All right. Well, I'm going to transition into a couple of closing slides. And then one thing that I always do in these is what we call a whiffle. And it's what I feel like expressing. So at the end of this, we'll just go around and everyone will have an opportunity to share whatever they feel like expressing. And it can be on this topic or not. It's just a way for us to close out these sessions. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Action Coach and how it may benefit your organization, I offer complimentary coaching sessions for folks. It's a 2-hour deep dive into your business, identifying opportunities and challenges and looking through the lens of our processes and procedures to give you just a better understanding of, is coaching for you? Will the model help you? And if so, what's the right program for you? So if you're interested in that, please give me a call. We talked about planning earlier. I do these quarterly planning sessions. The next one's coming up here on June 5th. And because of everything that's going on, I am offering these as a pay whatever you can and or scholarship. If you simply aren't in a position to be able to pay, that's okay. Back to my why, back to my purpose of helping as many business owners as I can. I want to make sure that folks have the opportunity to put their plans in place to come out of this pandemic and be set up for success in Q3. I also run webinars a couple times a month to learn a little bit more about our processes, the 6 steps of building a better business. You can get information on that. These are complimentary, an hour and a half deep dive. It's 99% educational. You're going to walk away with 2 or 3 strategies that you can apply to your business right away. Things that you just may not have thought of that can help take your business to the next level. Next week, we're going to do something a little differently. I've had to adjust the time because I've got a conference with Action Coach. So we're going to do it in the morning from 9 to 10:30. And instead of having guest panelists, it's just going to be an open session for everybody to share, right? To ask questions and to share. And it's not just me answering the questions. It's going to be everybody in the community answering questions and helping support and encourage one another. So if you're currently registered for today's webinar, as an example, you'll automatically be included in next week's, and you'll get the reminder emails, and it's the same Zoom link as today. If you're not registered today, then you'll want to get yourself registered. Jason mentioned this earlier, right? The most important thing about today is to make sure that you're thinking about how to put these things into action. You know, the reason that we're called Action Coach is that's the critical piece of any learning, is putting it into action. So if you haven't already, highly encourage you to write down the 5 ideas that you learned from today's conversation that you're going to take action on. Ensure that you have somebody that's holding you accountable to that, whether it's a person, a physical person, somebody from your tribe, accountability partner, a coach, or a software program that's going to pop up and say, hey, don't forget to do those things that you committed to. If you're interested in being a future panelist, would love to have you join us. And again, thank you so much to Jacqueline and Jason for your generosity today and your insights. Very much appreciate it. And so now, if there's no questions, we'll go into the WIFL. And again, what that is what I feel like expressing. So I'll ask Jacqueline or Jason to start, and then we'll go around to our participants after the 2 panelists. Jacqueline, you want to go first?
Yeah, I want to express gratitude and say thank you. Honestly, it's not every day you wake up and you get to sit next to amazing people like you and have these awesome conversations that fire me up. And so honestly, thank you. And I'm connected with all of you, but if you're watching this after the fact, please find me on LinkedIn, Jacqueline Martinez.
Thanks. Jason, what do you feel like expressing?
So I would say the same. Gratitude for, for 2 years, I was plagued by my what if abouts where I don't have anything to say. And even if I did, nobody would want to listen. And I've been asked to be on podcasts and to be on webinars like this and to share. And it's just, it blows my mind still that those fears were so stupid and I listened to them for so long, because I do have something to say and people do want to listen. So grateful for that. And I just would like to encourage people to do something as a result today to ignite hope and to torch fear. And so I'm going to grab it real quick. One of the things that I talk about is a marker of hope. These are my marker of hope. These are the shoes that I'm going to wear when I get a paid gig to go out of my house and speak on a stage again. So these sit on my desk very close to me so that I can see them. And, whether that's a place you're going to go eat, a outfit that you want to wear, an adventure that you want to take, somehow, some way capture that and put it somewhere where you can see it every day. So then in the midst of all this crazy chaos that we're all going through, there is something that marks that hope of where you're going when this is all over, because this is new now. This is not new normal, and this will end.
Thank you, Jason. Angie, what do you feel like expressing?
There you go. Had to unmute. I have a quote on my desk that many of us are friends with this individual that she shared it on one of her LinkedIn posts earlier when all this started. And I have it right here and I refer to it often. What's the one thing I can do right now that my future me will thank me for? And I've been spending a lot of time referring back to that. And each day it's something different. Sometimes it's, hey, I went on a walk today and got 3 miles in. Sometimes it's, I had lunch with my kid. Or sometimes it's, I spent more time heads down work just to make my business better. But I just wanted to share that quote with everyone. And hopefully that's something you can think about with yourself every day too.
Thanks, Angie. Kara, what do you feel like expressing?
Sorry, had to finish writing that quote down. I really enjoyed today's, sorry, I'm using my phone today. I really enjoyed listening to you guys today and wrote a lot of notes down on my pad of paper here. And we're talking a lot about shifting, like earlier on, talking about how you could shift your business and that kind of thing. And just today, kind of neat thing that we're a product-based business, and so we do have a retail location, but my dad goes and does a lot of craft shows and stuff like that. And of course, because of everything, those aren't happening anymore. And one of the I can't think of what she's called, but she's in charge of one of the couple craft shows that we've done for many years. And she contacted us today and said, hey, we're doing a virtual craft fair. Would you be interested in participating? So we're like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. And it, costs a little bit, but not a ton, certainly not as much as driving to Ohio and the booth fees and all that kind of stuff. So, we're going to give it a shot. And there's, on this site that we're going through, there's lots of others all over the country of different fairs and things like that. So I'm excited to try that out and see how that'll work for us and just shifting that part of our business a little bit. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited. So.
Thank you, Kara. Steve, what do you feel like expressing?
So I'm thanks for making me go last. So I've been sitting here listening to everybody's thoughts and of course drawing a complete blank, and which is odd for me. But just before Kara ended, the thought just came back to me about the idea that faith and fear can't coexist at the same time. And, we've all experienced a fair amount of fear in this last few months. And it may be related to COVID. It may be related to something totally different. But when trials and adversity and things are showing up in our lives and we get afraid. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We don't know if we'll make it today. We don't know if we'll make enough money to support our family. We don't. There's so many things that you can be afraid about, but the faith, and I think not just religious faith, that God is kind of watching out for us and it has kind of a bigger purpose and a bigger goal in mind, just because we can't see it, but faith in effort, faith in determination, faith in grit, and faith in that idea of don't say whoa when you're in a mud hole, and continuing to move through that. Those two concepts just don't exist in you at the same time. And so all of these things that you guys have talked about, that's just what's sticking out to me. So that would be what I'd share is when fear does show up, and it does show up uninvited, refocus on faith, the things that you do know. Go back to the promise. Go back to the hope. Go back to the things that are bright, and allow those things to outshine the darkness that fear tends to bring with it.
Thank you, Steve. Michelle, what do you feel like expressing?
You weren't last, Steve. This week has been challenging, but it's also had its high points as well. I had ordered some new product from a new vendor that I've been wanting to order from for a long time, and the samples came in and it felt like Christmas because the quality was more than I expected. I knew it was good quality, but it was even higher than my expectations. So having that to show to my clients, and being able to finally do outdoor sessions for seniors and families, and even headshots. I'm setting up my garage so I can do photo headshots in the garage because it's an open space. And so doing that and just feeling more positive this week than I have in quite a while. And these webinars on Friday has helped me see a little bit of light in that dimness, with everybody talking about their same issues that I've been dealing with, getting through day in and day out. So that's it.
Thank you, Michelle. So what I feel like expressing is also gratitude for each of you giving of your hour and a half today to spend with me, and Jacqueline and Jason for your generosity of your time to share with us your insights and wisdom. And my story is similar to others. Right? So my business has been open for just coming up on a year. Haven't paid myself in a year, and then the COVID hit. And so, I'm going through those same fears and wonders and what ifs. And I posted in the chat box, like, I know with my entire heart that God's going to provide. I just don't know how. And it can be overwhelming and discouraging. And if I allow myself to be stuck in that, then I won't get out of bed, right? Instead of saying, hey, you know what? I like what Jason says a lot, right? People do want to hear what I've got to say, and I do have value to provide. And I know there's a lot of business owners out there who are struggling. So if I just tie myself to that and be more about giving back and helping and serving, the rest will take care of itself. And you know what? That somehow it does, and the bills are getting paid, and I'm having a whole lot more fun now than I ever did in the corporate world. So,
amen
who
to
cares, right? Just, it's a lot more fun. So I thank you all again for giving of your time today and sharing your stories, and just appreciate all of you being part of my community. So have just a couple of closing thoughts here, just to reinforce everything we've talked about. Right? So
yes,
this one goes without really having to say it, but the biggest risk you can take after all of what we talked through is to do nothing, right? To just tuck your notes on your desk and go back to your regular life. So it's really all about taking action and figuring out from today's conversation, what are the things that are going to be most meaningful and impactful for your life, and how are you going to take action on that? Thank you all very much. Have a fantastic long weekend, and God bless.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks.
you. So nice to meet you.